我學咗廣東話有一排啦，但係最近我覺得有啲停滯不前，同埋覺得有啲灰心。我唔識睇又唔識寫中文，咁樣令我好難進步。So when it comes to learning Chinese and Cantonese and other similar languages, I've always followed the advice that says don't learn to read and write Chinese characters right at the beginning when you're just starting out. Why? Because it's such a huge task that your time is better spent learning basic conversation, to speak with other people, even in a simple way, so that you can start to feel that progress, get a bit of momentum going, and feel motivated to keep studying. And I think that's generally pretty good advice. The question becomes, all right, well, when do you start to focus on learning to read and write Chinese? That's the question, and that's exactly the point that I find myself at now with Cantonese. So why now? Why not 6 months ago or 6 months from now? Why start learning Chinese characters right now at this point? Well, it's got a lot to do with my environment here in London, which is amazing, but my opportunities to speak and practice Cantonese are very few and far between, and those opportunities are limited to speaking. Most of the time, I can't be speaking Cantonese, and the fact that I can't read and write, and I'm basically illiterate in the language, is a huge, huge handicap, because it means I just can't study the way I would Spanish, French, or another language which was easy for me to actually read. So right now I feel well and truly stuck at what you might call an intermediate plateau in Cantonese. I can speak pretty well, but it's not great, and there's tons of stuff I don't know. I've got a limited vocabulary, and so on. Now, when I think about other languages that I've learned and think about how I've managed to break through that plateau and become, properly fluent in the language, it has always involved reading. I have to be able to read stuff, whether it's emails from friends, news articles, books, magazines, and in order to do that, you have to be able to read. So this is my big play now. The key to my progress in Cantonese, I believe, is to start to learn to read Chinese characters. But Cantonese being the language that it is, it's far from straightforward, and there are a number of serious problems or difficulties learning Cantonese without knowing Mandarin first, which I don't. The main problem is that Cantonese is mostly a spoken language, and what that means is if you watch a video of someone speaking Cantonese, for example, and you look at the transcript or the subtitles are not going to be word for word what they say. Rather, they take the concept of what people are saying in Cantonese and then they write it down a slightly different, more formal version in standard written Chinese. And so people in Hong Kong kind of grow up with this parallel language where they kind of study traditional Chinese, Mandarin if you like, in school, but then when they go home with their friends, family and so on, they'll speak Cantonese, the spoken language. It's a bit like you in the UK, for example, speaking Cockney with your mates down the pub and then going home and reading a Jane Austen novel. They're two very, very different kinds of English, and it's the same thing with Cantonese. And so if you imagine posing this question to a native English speaker, what would you prefer to do? To be able to sort of chat with your friends in whatever kind of English they speak, or to be able to read the newspaper or a book or a novel or browse the internet? It's a false choice. You want to be able to do both, and that's where I'm at in Cantonese now. And so I'm faced with this task of actually learning to read and write a different language to that which I have learned to speak. And of course in Cantonese it's not written in the Latin alphabet, it's written in Chinese characters, which you may have seen before and noticed that they're rather complicated. To make matters worse, it's not simplified Chinese characters like they use in mainland China, it's traditional Chinese characters which are even harder. So I've got a bit of a task ahead of me, but not being one to back down from a challenge, I'm up for it. And what you can expect from this video series is my documenting exactly how I go about understanding the task, figuring out the task, and also doing the task. So I hope through this I'm going to be able to keep myself accountable, shed some light on these particular challenges that are inherent to Cantonese, and also to those of you who are interested in learning Chinese characters in general, whether that's for Mandarin or even for Japanese. Hopefully this will prove to be useful. Right now, I don't have any of the answers, but I'm going to go and figure it out, and you'll be the first to know in this video. So hit subscribe to make sure that you keep up to date with all these videos, and of course head over to the main blog over at iwillteachyoualanguage.com and the podcast, which is called the I Will Teach You a Language podcast, for more updates and information and articles and things of various kinds. I'm super excited about this, a little bit daunted, but excited nonetheless. So I'll see you in the next video.